G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Caulen Foster from Brainpower Agency based in Miami, United States. Thanks for your time today, Caulen.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you.
Let's start with how we know each other. Bella from Oscar Hamilton put us in touch. They've sent us quite a few great guests over the years, so I really appreciate you.
For sure. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
So basically, Brainpower is an agency that specializes in building, managing, and growing ecosystems for direct-to-consumer native brands online. So if you are, and predominantly, honestly, online consumer brands is kind of where we're positioned in the market. So essentially, Brainpower will come in and we will take over the entire ecosystem of the business. So that includes pretty much tasks ranging from copywriting, page building, paid media, email, advertising, SMS, conversion rate optimization, financial literacy as it pertains to the marketing efforts that we're making. We essentially just come in, usually a business that our ICP, our ideal customer, our ideal client is probably a business that is kind of outgrown the small in-house team that they have, but they're probably not big enough to hire a full-scale in-house team. So we exist kind of in this sweet spot where we can basically come in as an in-house team. We're pretty selective, and because of the nature of what we do, it's a higher ticket service. So we don't work with as many clients. We only have, I think, like 22 clients, but we manage their entire business. So essentially, that's what we're responsible for. And yeah, we've been in business for about 5 years now. And my business partner and I started in a hotel lobby. We were the ones building the landing pages, writing the copy, creating the offers, optimizing the pages, doing the paid media. It was just me and him for the first 4 to 6 months of the business. And then we got a little bit of a pop and started hiring.
So one-stop marketing shop basically for bigger online businesses.
Yeah, I guess bigger. Yeah, I would say bigger, usually early 7 figures. It can also be very well-funded startups too, because most of them understand that you need to build an ecosystem, right? Like an ecosystem, most experienced brand builders understand that it takes a lot more than just paid traffic to really grow a direct-to-consumer channel, right? It takes a lot more than that. So where we exist is kind of like for those businesses in the early 7 figures, early or mid 7 figures, early 8 figures, or just businesses that have probably done this before, or they're very well funded. Maybe it's a company that has a huge retail presence. They're a consumer brand and they're moving into D2C.
And do you just focus on Northern America?
Yeah, we have, well, we do. Yeah, exactly. Canada and the US. Yeah. So North America predominantly. We have had some clients in the UK, but yeah, the vast majority of our clients come here from North America.
And how did you start out? You mentioned hotel lobby with your business partner. Was it 2019?
Yeah.
You started 2019?
Yeah, right around the end of 2019. Actually, mid, and then we were full scale. So, I have a background in consumer goods. So, like, super random fact about me, I actually invented the almond protein category in 2014. So I created, basically, if you've ever seen like powdered peanuts or something like that, I found a way to do that with almonds using pressure. And then essentially that would extract the fat and increase the protein content of the almonds. I took that base, put it with natural flavors. It was plant-based, which in 2014 was like, right, just hit great timing. The vegan movement was really big at that time too. So I hit vegan and almond like right at the sweet spot in 2014. And then I had simultaneously come into contact with a mentor who taught me how to do like paid media and understanding like direct response advertising specifically, and leveraging paid traffic, specialized offers, a lot of like really nerdy stuff on the direct response side. So I scaled the business very quickly, but I didn't really understand the mechanics of the business, like unit economics, financial literacy. That's one of the areas that we focus on heavy these days, probably from the pain that I experienced before. Because I took such a massive loss. When on the way up, it was great, but as quickly as I took it up, I brought it down 2 times faster. So because I was my success was purely contingent on Meta or Facebook at the time. And my cost of goods was going up. Everything, I went from being profitable $16 to $17 on a $39 product, which these days would be unheard of. It would never happen. Um, I went from doing that to losing, double digits per sale. And so between hemorrhaging and all that other stuff, the business ended up dying out. I like to say exited, but I basically liquidated my position with my two investors, and we parted on good terms because they did well during the good runs. But that was it. That was my background, and then we moved. I did consulting for a little bit. Wasn't a big fan of it. Did it for about a year. I was sitting, got an opportunity, called one of my old friends, and I said, "Hey, I've got this opportunity for a supplement brand that wants to bring me on as like a fractional CMO type of deal." And I was like, I could probably use your help as like a director of growth type of arrangement where we feed off each other because he's really smart. And he's like, well, if we're going to do this, let's just do an agency together because we both know the space and I don't want to do small projects. If we're going to build something, let's build something big. And he's like, we should. And then a couple of days later, he's like, we should name the company Brain Power because that's what we use. And I went up to his house, which is about 4 hours from me. And I was staying at the hotel, and that's where Brain Power was born. And we worked there for an entire week, just delegating tasks and, hey, how are we going to get more clients? And that was it.
And it's good that you've niched into, those kind of seven-figure e-commerce businesses. That's very smart. And I'm assuming, given the trauma of your almond business, you've got a tattoo of LTV to CAC ratio on your body somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, the thing is the LTV, the problem was cash flow management and understanding customer life cycles and there's so many little nuggets I could drop on that topic because like one of them is the naming convention, like something so simple as the naming convention of your product. So I did something that everybody's supposed to do. And nobody does it, but I did it very late in the game, which was call my customers.
Yeah.
And I found out when I first launched the company, I was, we're going into like the early boom of influencer marketing and all this. So this is 2014, so it's still very early. I'm thinking my customer is going to be like a 25-year-old like fitness model, right? And that's what I thought my customer. It ended up being like a 60-year-old, female was the ideal customer, and which was fine. The problem is that since the name of the product was almond protein powder, they associated it with protein intake. So if they had breakfast that morning, or they had breakfast and lunch, and they were, maybe we're going to have a light dinner, they wouldn't use the product because they associated it only with protein. And that audience is not they're not fitness, minded. They're not like lifting weights. So had I looked back and I understood that and done some more research on my consumer, I would have probably named it with something that incentivized daily use, right? So like stop skipping breakfast, right? I would have named it something, and I would have given it a much better name. I named it almond protein powder. I have a crazy story about that too, but naming conventions, understanding, like you said, your CAC to LTV ratio, well, that would have been dramatically reduced had I understood what the naming implications were of my product. So that, and then understanding unit economics, right? Like pure unit economics. Some businesses are just destined for failure because people sell what they want to sell versus what the market allows them to sell. Like just because you want to sell something and just because it's a great idea, if you don't get your unit economics dialed in, that business is going to fail. Or you're just going to be hemorrhaging money and playing a cat and mouse game with profitability, which from personal experience is like literally one of the worst feelings you can ever get because you just keep selling and you feel like you should be feeling good about the fact that you're selling, but you're not making any money, which really sucks because you're like, why isn't this working? So yeah.
That's why we've put together a 4-week strategy program for that exact reason, because we believe strategic planning starts with the numbers. Because if you've got a faulty business model, why execute the wrong strategy if there's no ROI? So you've got to do your numbers first. Particularly like an e-commerce business is much easier to do. But for the audience, the LTV to CAC ratio, lifetime value, so how long a customer's with you and what the gross profit is, not the sales that you're going to make from that customer over life, to a ratio of CAC or customer acquisition costs. So it should be a minimum 3 to 1, no more than 5 to 1. I'll put it in the show notes, an ebook that I've written around all this, but so important when you want to scale.
Yeah, totally. And that was the thing is I couldn't absorb. We had great LTV, But the thing is like that's why the ratio is so important because you have to think if you're losing money, like, and a lot of supplement companies do this. Most people don't like understand that. Like a lot of companies, they lose money on the front because they're paying their the customer acquisition cost is worth it because they know their LTV is great. I couldn't sustain the gap because people weren't the life cycle, the usage cycle was too small. So like if somebody would have been replenishing every 30 days, I actually would probably still be in business or I may have had an exit, right? But it was taking people as long as up to 90 days to go through that. Mind you, this is only 15 servings because again, it was the psychology of the consumer. So there's a lot of intangibles there, but your ratio, if I would have been, some people lose money because they know in 3 weeks they'll recuperate their customer acquisition costs and they have phenomenal profits. So I also had small margins. So even if I did get a purchase the next month, it would take me longer to pay back that customer acquisition cost because I had smaller margins. Whereas if I had bigger margins, if I would have been charging $60 instead of 39, my payback period would have gotten smaller because I would have had bigger numbers to work with. So yeah, it's a delicate balance, and you don't really learn it until you go through the crap of it. And I did. I definitely did.
So 5 years ago, 2019, when you started, how old were you when you started Brain Power?
I was about 31, 32, 30. Yeah, right around 31, 32.
And do you have any key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over the last 5 years?
Yeah, yeah. So we actually, when we started, we had one client that was doing right around, I think, about 3.5 mil a year. And that was our only brand that we were managing. And we achieved this year, and I think we're going to go surpass that. We achieved 100 million under management. So we're responsible for it because, like, again, we manage the entire ecosystem. So it's not like we're just managing the emails, right? We're managing the entire business. Business owners give us the keys and say, here, either work alongside our team or, it's all on Brain Power. And yeah, that we have a couple of potential clients in the works right now that are pretty decent sized clients. So I think I'm hoping by the end of the year, fingers crossed, we'll achieve probably between 115 to 120 million under management.
That's great. And so that's effectively the marketing budgets of those businesses.
The revenue that they generate combined.
Okay. Yeah, got it. Fantastic.
So yeah, yep.
What about the number of full-time equivalent team members? You and your business partner started, so there were two of you at the start. Where are you at now?
Yeah, yeah. We're at about, I want to say we're at about 27 full-time in-house team members. Everybody who's basically associated with any account has to be a full-time Brain Power team member. So we're at 27 now. We have some pretty decent size initiatives that we're doing. So I'm thinking we're probably going to be closer to like 40 by the end of Q1 next year. That doesn't include it if we have a couple of acquisitions we're working on. So if we acquire another agency, that'll effectively probably like add our about 20 to 30% of our workforce just through an acquisition. So, but yeah, 2027 right now, projected to be more than that. And if we get this acquisition completed, it'll definitely be way more than that.
Will that be your first acquisition?
Yes, yeah, of another agency. Yes, we have an M&A branch of Brain Power that my business partner kind of he was originally the CEO, and then we got into understanding like, hey, if we help scale some of these brands and some of them have the intent to exit, we could help them. And last year we did 13 million in acquisitions. And it was divided by two clients though. So it's small, but it's still a decent sized number. But those brands started small. They were sub 1 million when we got them. So that's we've done brokering on the acquisition side, which my business partner spearheads. He's literally the person that's spearheading the whole M&A. That's why we might be adding more team members because we're doing some pretty aggressive stuff there. But in terms of our own personal acquisition, where we're trying to acquire another business, it will be our first. My business partner has acquired some on his own that have become portfolio brands inside of Brain Power, so like direct to consumer channels that he bought himself, and we just leverage our infrastructure to help scale those businesses. And Brain Power, gets a piece of whatever happens there. But a direct Brain Power acquisition, this will be our first.
Have you or your business partner read any of John Morillow's 3 books or listened to his podcast, Built to Sell?
Yeah, my business partner definitely has. Yeah, for sure. For
Great
sure.
material. Yeah, and there's quite a few marketing agencies in there in his podcast series. Yeah. When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
You know, I don't. It's hard to explain because I don't know if I feel like there's still. I'm not one of those people that's like in this perpetual state of like, oh, I'm never going to get there, right? Because I don't. interestingly enough, I don't think I want to be a $50 million agency where we have 100 clients that we're doing this level of work for. It's really tough to do this level of work because it's so intricate. So I feel like one area that helps me feel like we've done a good job is that I'm not worried about the fulfillment of high quality, what I call undeniably good work. We've got a great team in place that my business partner basically built the when we first started, he was effectively acting as the CEO and the COO because he's very operationally minded. I'm very sales minded. So I could drive the business. I could essentially bring the car and he could put the gas, or he would bring the car and I would put the gas in it, right? So there's a lot of times where I feel a little uneasy, like, oh, is this stuff getting done? Or, just because the founder's mind just is that way, I think sometimes. Maybe I haven't heard about a certain initiative that we talked about. I haven't heard any updates on it. And then I'll be like, I'll talk to my other business partner, who's our chief growth officer. I'll be like, hey man, what's going on with this? I'll be like, oh yeah, we're already almost done with that. Yeah, that initiative is pretty much done. We've got everything set up. And I'm like, shit, I didn't even have to do anything. Like like the right people are in place and they do great work for a service business. I feel like when you can get there, no matter how big or how small you are, right? Assuming you don't have cash flow problems, which I do think is a good thing for us. I feel like you've really done a great job and you've really gotten the definition of succeed. It's like the same thing as defining wealth. The wealth can mean a bunch of different things to a bunch of different people. Some people want a bill, some people want a mill, but it's really relative to how much your expenditures are relative to how much you bring in. I would say the same thing is about like a service business. Whether you got 10 clients or whether you got 20 clients, if you can put the right people in the right place to do their job and you don't have to deal with buyers, you're succeeding. So I would say that that's like where I would say that I've gotten the feeling like, okay, I'm not a chicken with my head running off, chicken like running around with my head cut off anymore.
Yeah. So does that answer the next question? What does success look like to you? It's getting the A players on the bus.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like, I have my own, I guess my own materialistic goals and the things that I'm searching for in life, but um, I don't particularly feel like there's a specific metric that I've looked for other than like, do I have freedom? Do I have, I don't like the term like just like freedom of time and financial freedom. It's just like, do I have the ability to make decisions the way I want? Do I have the ability to create a company culture with my team? Do I have the ability to do all the things that I enjoy about, I guess, entrepreneurship that is, fun, that make it fun, building the vision from scratch. We're building a new initiative under Brain Power. It's like a retention thing service. And it's a vision. It's from zero. And I like, that's the kind of stuff that I want to build and scale to whatever my personal scaling goal is. Don't mind my dog bolting back and forth. If you see him, he's got his tennis ball here.
Perfect question for you. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast growing business?
Make sure your systems are in place because fulfillment is probably one of the most, a lot of people when they think a fast growing business, a lot of people think about sales. And one thing I've learned through my business partner and through living it personally is like you can sell everything you want, but if you can't fulfill it the right way, it's not going to be a long-term sustainable business. So I used to think again, like with my first business, I thought we had a huge business because we were making a lot of sales. But I now realize I didn't have much of a business because I wasn't doing anything to optimize the fulfillment and the scaling of that business. I didn't leverage economies of scale on working with my vendors on pricing or on better terms. And I didn't realize that I had those problems until they became problems. Because how would I know about how my terms would impact me when I have a ton of cash in the bank and I don't even care about terms? But if I knew what I knew now, I would have said, I got all this cash in the bank. I still need to go negotiate better terms. I've got like net 10 on pretty massive invoices at the time. I'm on like 10-day payment terms. I could have easily gotten 60-day terms. But by the time I started to make those negotiations, it was already kind of too late. We were already on a ski slope down. So just make sure that you're, when you market it, it's great, scale it, but just really make sure that the systems are there to support the business, or else it's going to make the whole experience, an experience that should be really fun, right? An experience of growing a business where you've got like sales coming in should be a really fun experience. But if you don't have the systems in place, it's going to be miserable.
And how did you fund the business?
Brain Power was self-funded. was self-funded. Like, the luxury of we had to put some cash into it, from my previous businesses and stuff like that. I had I had something that I could invest in it, but it wasn't a large investment. We weren't doing anything crazy. It was mostly for traveling expenditures. But it was self-funded, but we have no debt on the business.
And it's three investors, three of you.
So it's two founding partners, my business partner Camilo and I, and then funny story, our first full-time hire, his name's Alex. We brought him in, and he just brought a completely different growth mindset to like organic and Google. We were very paid Meta, and Facebook was still a pretty decent performing channel back then. It's not terrible now, but it was way better back in 2015, 2016, 2017, even going into 2019. So we're still rooted in there. And within 6 months, we're like, dude, if we don't make this guy a partner, he's going to get poached. So that was our initial motivation. And he went from basically being like a director of growth. Now he's our chief growth officer. He oversees basically, I always tell people when people want to sell me something or sell a service to me or something, I'm like, I'm not even the decision maker. Whatever he tells me is what I'm going to do, you know?
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Yeah, I definitely would. I think that, if we're talking, there's two parts of my industry. One would be the e-commerce industry, and one would be the agency industry. I'll speak on both. Agency industry, for sure, especially if you have a skill set that you know that you know very well and can help in the e-commerce space, whether that's UGC or Google Media Buying, there's no shortage of clients. You just gotta go out there and hunt, right? I'm that's one of like my skill set outside of like the growth marketing is I'm good at hunting. Like I'm good at bringing in clients, and that has helped us tremendously. Uh, so if you have a skill set that you can monetize in the e-commerce space, an agency is a phenomenal way, as long as you can deal with the management side. You have to understand that the business is equally as much service as it is communication and expectation management. I live in a world that is probably 65% expectation management, and even more so when I'm dealing with a potential client. I'd say 70% of our conversation is expectation management, and then I can go into how we can actually help the business. In the e-commerce space, I would definitely say that there's a ton of opportunity in this space. I think expectations have to be reasonable. You can't really go into this understanding that if you have bad unit economics, no proof of product market fit, like you don't know if the product's going to work, you should not go into this expecting to be profitable and making millions of dollars in your first year, because you've seen a bunch of people on Instagram that are talking about paid Meta or this channel or that channel making them millionaires overnight. Very unrealistic to expect that. Doesn't mean it can't happen if you come up with a great product. But I always tell people win scratch off lottery tickets all the time. That doesn't mean that you're going to go and win one if you walk into the gas station. So focus on playing the long game, understanding that you know, driving a small business. If I had to give one nugget actually for anybody who wants to get in e-commerce, even if they're scaling, is sometimes it's better to have a stable business than a growing business. And I've had this conversation with quite a few 8-figure founders that are clients of ours. And it's so crazy when you think about it, because they'll be wanting to scale their business. And, scalability and profitability are two independent levers. If they both went like this, you and I probably wouldn't be having this conversation. I'd be in Bora Bora or flying somewhere, all over the place, because this very rarely happens. It almost never happens, right? So with that being said, I have one of my clients. We were having a discussion because he's trying to crack, the 15 million mark. And he's a ways away from it. He's about 8 or 9 million, and that's his number. And every time we push, the business just doesn't hold the levels of profitability that he's looking for. And I just asked him. I said, "Hey, man, like why are you doing this? Like, is this a number that you just genuinely want to hit because there's something attached to it, or like what's going on?" And I said, "Would you rather have a business that's profitable and I can basically predictably make you profit on 6 to 8 million a year? Like, I can just guarantee you that you've got money. Would you rather have a business that does that, or would you rather have a business that makes 15 million and doesn't really make you any money?" And it actually took him a while to answer that question, which is crazy because some people get attached to the number and the growth.
Yeah.
And for me, I would rather have a business that's doing 2 to 3 million a year, maybe some net profit of 300, 400K a year, consistent, it's stable, than trying to push that and trying to get to 10 million and I'm eating up all my margin in other opportunities that I'm pursuing, testing new channels, all the things that's going to take to get you there. So if I had to give some advice on e-commerce, manage your expectations properly. And if you do get some level of growth, understand that sometimes the level of growth that you're focused on might not be in line with the goals that you actually have. Because eventually he said, you know what? Yeah, let's scale back. Let's just I want to enjoy my life, And that's how we got there.
Yeah, sometimes it's wise to pause the growth and let the operations, or the systems, etc., and the people catch up to that, ready for that
Yeah.
next push and plateau of growth. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be super linear and super fast. It can be a timely thing, or like I said, sometimes, there's a saying, if you're not growing, you're dying. But it doesn't always have to be like hyper growth. The growth that we've become so spoiled in with like digital marketing, so to speak.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
From a service business standpoint, it's definitely been managing people. People are the toughest thing to scale, because there's so many variables around human beings. We all have personal lives that, like, if you have a designer that's going through depression, their work's going to not be as good as when they're happy. It's just, and how do you combat that, right? Like, you can't just say, well, don't be depressed anymore. Like, it's a real concern you have to have for your team members, and help them through it and work through it with them. So, being able to understand people and work with people and really like give grace when it's reasonable to do so. That's been the toughest thing, is just really learning to scale people from a service business. And then from a consumer goods standpoint, with my experience there, it would be not being prepared to understand the financial literacy of my business. A lot of people get caught up in the marketing and they really have no idea what the finances look behind that marketing. They see what's on, like if you're doing Shopify, you see what's there, you see your AOV, you see your revenue, you see your return on ad spend on Facebook, and that's how you're doing your accounting, right? Like, it's very like napkin math, right? But really, when you start to understand contribution margin, unit economics, profit, product based profitability. So, like, what products am I marketing that are most profitable for driving revenue and profit for my business? So, really focusing on profit, a profit first model
Yeah.
for the business would be consumer goods side.
Yeah, totally agree on both those points. Obviously, as we've talked about, knowing your numbers, but people, as I like to say, are the hardest thing in small business and its greatest asset, because you can't grow without people. And as Jim Morrison from The Door said, people are strange.
Yeah. They've all got their quirks, and I have guys that have been with me for 5 years, 4 years. And every even myself, I remember a year ago, we were on a good streak. We had a good one. We had just finished that acquisition. We did very well on that acquisition because we got paid a commission on it. And I was a little complacent, and my business partner was like, I feel like I don't have a partner. I feel like I got like a sales guy who just comes in, comes out, and it was a tough conversation. But I'm objective enough to know that, like, hey, it's all done with love, and we have a phenomenal partnership, and kicked my ass right into gear, and I got right back on it. And before we know it, I'm back speaking at conferences again. And because I had stopped all my speaking, I had stopped all my networking because we were comfortable. And we all need a little kick sometimes. So,
Yeah.
it's
I think
important.
you'll appreciate one of my favorite Mark Twain quotes, which is, "The more I get to know people, the more I like my dog."
It's hilarious. I have a dog, and I was like, the more I own a dog, the more I realize I'm a cat person.
I haven't heard that one. Yeah, my 12-year-old chocolate Labrador's snoring on the couch behind me at the moment.
Yeah.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Operations. I've had to really like become a not just thinking about what needs to be done, but finding ways to like implement what needs to be done. Those are like two entirely different things. Understanding what the problem is, and then learning how to build a system and a process that can solve that problem consistently, right? That has been like because I'm very ADD. So it's very difficult for me to like think of that. And plus, I'm like, at heart, I'm a marketer. So like, I like the selling. I like the advertising. I'm like in the artsy side of it, right? But moving into the CEO role and like working alongside my business partner as the COO, it's been very, very challenging for me to like even follow like, certain softwares that we use, using ClickUp. Took me a while to adapt it and use it, and not use, I use paper. I write, if you look here, I got paper, like paper pads that I write on, that's my to-do list. So transitioning from that into like scalable systems and operations and following those systems and operations and leading my team by making sure that they see that I'm following those systems and operations. That's probably been my single greatest challenge. And this year I've made huge strides in fixing it, but it took me a while to get to the point where I'm at now, where I'm like, is it in ClickUp? Did we put it here? What does Monday look like? It's taken some time to get there.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
If I had to guess, I would probably say the the thought of all the things that go through your head that need to happen when you're growing so fast. So like sleeping sometimes has been very difficult because like your brain, especially again, my brain fires at 100 miles an hour as it is. So I'll be sitting there in bed and I'll be sleeping and then, oh, I gotta do that. I'll roll over, I'll grab my phone, I'll type the note, I'll put it down. I'll go back to try and go back to sleep. Oh, I gotta do that. Da, 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 da. It just like all of the components of all of the things that happen with fast growth. And that was actually even been the case for us this year because we've essentially almost more than doubled in size this year. So it's been that like, hiring people, building, oh, I need to do this. I need to follow through with that. I need to make sure that this project is still done. Cause then I'm still in, I don't want to say I'm in the weeds, but I'm still involved in some projects because I actually enjoy what I do. So I don't just set it and forget it. I'm actively working with our team inside of client creative calls, going through the media accounts and seeing what does paid media look like for certain clients. So I'm still actively involved. So I would say that keeping track of everything that needs to get done and making sure that it does get done has been the thing that I've enjoyed the least because it kind of removes you from your peace in a lot of ways. You get what my business calls what my business partner calls relaxiety. You can never, when you relax, you get like anxiety from relaxing because you just feel like something has to get done.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
Uh, you know, it's working. Like it's working. This is coming together. There's like this just like this feeling of like, we had like, especially like this last quarter, um, we had a really good quarter. And it's like the team is doing what they're supposed to do. It's like, I can imagine like when an inventor wants to invent something, you take a maybe we're not doing something as complex as a light bulb, but I'm sure that like that feeling of like, oh my God, it worked. And I think a lot of like people who start something, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, whether it's a course, whatever it is that you're selling, when you start to see it actually work and the thing that you've been thinking of comes to life. Like early this year, we never did user generated content as a service. We never monetized it. It was not something we did. And that was something I added at the beginning of the year. I'm like, listen, all of our clients need it. We're kind of doing some hybrid of it. We need to build this system out and we need to offer it as a service. And that has been like an anchor for us as a business to add as a service. I mean, it has really driven a lot of new customer acquisition because it's a great selling proposition in addition to what our service was before and seeing it come together now before we never had a single client that we brought on that would get UGC because we didn't offer it. Now every single client that comes to our business wants that service line. It's optional, but everybody takes it. So like just seeing things that you think of work is probably like my favorite part of the whole process.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
I would say my biggest mindset shift is probably understanding that things take time. Things take time. Great things take time. There's a part of me that used to be very like, I would think of something while I'm in the middle of something, shiny object syndrome in a way. But I
Squirrel.
would drastically, yeah, I would drastically underestimate the amount of time that it would take to accomplish a new idea that I would have. So just understanding that whatever you think you want to do inside of your business, probably multiply the amount of time you think that it's going to take by two. So if you think it's going to take a week, it's probably going to take you 2 weeks. If you think it's going to take a month, it's probably going to take you 2 months. And that's honestly a generous number. But yeah, things take time and you have to give things those time in order to give things that time in order for them to develop the right way.
Bill Gates said people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in a decade. Have you heard of
Yeah.
the 4x2 rule?
No, I have. It sounds familiar. I feel like I've heard it before, but go refresh my mind for sure.
Yeah, when I was living in London 15 or so years ago, I went to a conference and heard a VC say, obviously he gets hit up for money a lot from entrepreneurs, and he recounts the 4x2 rule. It's either going to take 4 times as long, cost twice as much, or take twice as long and cost 4 times as much. The difference is you get to choose which path you go down.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Um, well, an agency owner, somebody who's involved in the agency space, you gotta be resilient. You gotta be resilient. I've literally like I've gotten to a point like so I still remember um when my business partner, our chief growth officer, when he got to the partner level and he started to just kind of get more embedded in the business, we had three clients that we two one got acquired. We didn't broker that acquisition. The other brought in their in-house team, and the third one decided not to renew because their business wasn't performing that well. Just the overall business was not in a climate to be spending money on advertising with an agency. So in that span of 2 weeks, we lost, I want to say about 55K in billing. And um, my chief growth officer, my business partner, who had never really seen anything like that, was like freaking out. And mind you, this is like we're already in year 2, 3. Like I've already seen this. I've seen it at smaller numbers at the time, but the constricting was equivalent. So instead of us, having X amount under, if we would have lost 10 grand in billing, it would have been destructive. It would have killed our business. I'd already been there. So from an agency perspective, and any agency owner will tell you this, like this is not just me. Like you have to really take the hit and move. Mind you, literally replace that within a month and more just by like, all right, it happened. It sucks. It's a little scary. And those numbers are always going to get bigger. That wouldn't be tiny to us, but it wouldn't ring alarms all over the place. There would definitely be some, bee stings going around the business at the partner level, but it is what it is. It happens. So the numbers are going to get bigger. And the losses or the sting is gonna, what I call the tolerance for pain, is gonna grow.
Yes.
So from the agency space, you have to have a very high tolerance for pain and the ability to take that pain and keep moving forward.
Want specific advice to help you get your business through its number one growth challenge? Book a free 20-minute growth chat with me, Troy, the founder of Grow a Small Business. I'll recommend some resources which will help you grow your business with ease so you can live the lifestyle you've signed up for. Go to growasmallbusiness.com and click on Growth Chat. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Making people responsible for things they don't want to do. If there's one thing I've learned is like you don't want people to do something that they don't want to do. You want to make sure that you put people in a position to do things they enjoy, that they feel accomplished, that they feel a sense of pride in doing. I have an amazing executive assistant who has done so much great work for us, and I tried to put her in a role because I thought her ability to process information and build processes and do all these things would transition into another role, but she just didn't like that other role and she didn't succeed in that role. And I had to be objective enough to look at it and be like, well, she's not being successful because I put her in a position to do something she has no interest in doing. Just because her skill set would work in that field doesn't mean she's going to feel fulfillment in that field. So I try and make sure one of the questions that I ask anybody, like a new team member, when I have an onboarding call with them, the first question I always ask is, what are you really great at and what do you love doing? Because whatever that person wants to do, I'm going to put them there. And then I'm going to find out the things that they don't like doing. And I'm going to either give them support to accomplish that. So like a video editor that we have, our director of video editing at Brainpower. When I took over as CEO, I asked him, I said, what do you love doing? What do you hate doing? He's like, I love the editing process. I love transitions. I love doing that. And I was like, okay, what do you hate doing? It's like, I really don't like writing scripts. I don't like writing the storyboard. I want the finished product. So I went and brought in our copywriter, said, hey, I want you writing the scripts. Our creative director, I want you guys having your own internal, this goes back to systems and process. I want you guys to have your own internal meeting, develop the storyboard, get the raw content, and then bring it to Jackson and our team to do the editing. And that's what he did. And now I completely remove what he hates doing and I allow him to do what he loves doing, which allows my team to do undeniably good work because they're all working on things that they enjoy doing.
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Um, number one is giving people a sense of autonomy, right? Like I don't track time. Is the work done or is it not done? That's number one because it gives people the feeling of trust. Allowing people free reign to kind of, especially in the marketing world, you kind of have to do that. You can't pigeonhole people into things that you want them doing or how you think things should be done. You want to give people free reign to do free range to do the things that they think can help the business. And if you have the right culture, the vast majority of the time you're going to get people who do something with great intent. And if it doesn't work out, as long as it's not just completely and totally negligent, give them grace, right? Like when we were doing, scaling our UGC platform, my team may have invested in an influencer that didn't meet the metrics that we would normally fit for that price point, paying $500 to $1,000 for a creator that didn't meet the metrics that we had defined. It's not the end of the world. What can we learn from it? So yeah, I think and obviously learning from mistakes, even people when they don't do that, when they're not keeping up or something like that. What can we learn? What can we learn from what's happening here?
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Well, it's one of those things where I think that, well, especially so far, like for example, I have kids, right? So I've definitely I really believe strongly in a quality over quantity model when you're as busy as I am. So like for example, when I need to take the kids to practice, right? I'm there at practices. I don't go to every single practice. Their mom takes them to practice and stuff like that. But like games or tournaments or karate tournaments, my daughter's in Taekwondo, testing, those things, the big things. I don't miss when it comes to giving my kids like advice and life advice. My daughter, she has a small nail business that she's starting, and she's got nuggets. She knows more than a lot of people know because I've invested the quality time of it speaking to her about how to grow a business and teaching her about customer acquisition. She knows about her profit margins. These are for me. There's like a real big quality aspect of everything I do. So I know a lot of guys that that struggle with this, especially as dads. It's like, how do I have that balance between work and family? And it's for me, it's not how much time do you always give. It's just how much of the quality of the time. Every year I do a Father's Day trip with my kids. It's between 5 days, 7 days, and we just get off the grid for a week. And we've done it for the last 6 years, so they've got those memories forever. And to me, that's really how I balance quality. And then my wife and I, we try and make time for each other. It's tough because she has a daughter as well. So it's busy, but making it a priority is pretty much goes back to the quality and quantity thing. If you're just sitting there laying on the couch all the time, that's great. But you can also go to dinner and you can also, have a couple drinks together and stuff like that.
And how much professional development have you invested in yourself?
I mean, I just spent 10 grand yesterday. A lot. I'm 6 figures deep. I'm 6 figures deep in consulting, coaching. Like I said, I was telling you before when we got to catch up briefly, I just invested in some TikTok shop coaching, and a mentorship program that was 10 grand. I did when I moved into the CEO role. I hired another agency, a fellow agency owner who's running, a monster agency. I paid him right around 15K for consulting to understand, like, hey, how do you manage your team that's growing? How are you consistently, overseeing the growth of this business? So yeah, I'm definitely a healthy 6 figures. I'm big on personal. We're in countless masterminds, countless sales trainings, countless marketing trainings. It's up there. I've definitely lost track.
That's good. And you've obviously had mentors or coaches along the way, which is fantastic and very smart. Do you have a board of directors or advisors?
No, just mentors, just people that I typically pay for consulting and oversight.
And you're one of the few who've had on this exited a business. I know you liquidated the business, but any advice for anyone thinking of exiting one day?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, like like you said, built to sell. Is your company built to sell? That it sounds so simple, but it's that saying means a lot. So obviously, you have to be hyper focused on profitability, systems, and process, making sure you're not the key man in the business. That like if the business is without you, that your business is really not gonna work as well. I think building systems and process is really important. And I would say that making sure that you're setting the company up for long-term growth with initiatives that you have in place that a buyer might look at and say, "Oh, wow, that's really cool," right? Like I'm not just a one-trick pony. They have product development in place. They have things that they're launching. It's, people love new things. Consumers love new things. So if you have an e-commerce business, you should be focused on what the next move is, because one of the risks that you have as a business, if you're selling like if you're looking to sell a business that is kind of in the same, it's operating in the same realm, in the same field that it's been doing business in for the last 2 to 5 years, which I'm assuming you're probably on the latter of that if you're looking to exit and you have an exitable business. What's next, right? Like what's going to be next for that business, so that the person who's purchasing it doesn't say, "Man, I've got all my eggs in this same business model that has been operating for the last 3 to 5 years. What can we do in addition to that?" Bringing that to life for somebody is going to make the business a lot more desirable.
All right, Colin, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
I guess it depends on the kind of business you have, but I think predictable customer acquisition is probably always going to be the hardest thing for everybody at the start. It's the hardest thing to figure out what offer works best. What is it that your customers really truly want, not what you want to sell. I think if you can dial that in, like I have a friend who started a business and he had a really warm set of leads before he even started the business. So predictable customer acquisition was not a problem for him. So really, when you start, you really have to understand if I don't know how to get customers, I have to think of a way to actually start being able to go and find them. For me, it was trade shows, speaking at events, leveraging my network to be able to get on stages, paying to get on stage if I needed to at some points. Those, ironically, were never as profitable as the ones that were organic, ironically. But that was where I was good, because I was good with people and I'm comfortable on stage. So that was the way I lean. Some people are great with creating content, right? Like I'm not as big on content creation, but I know guys who are making serious money for their agency by just creating content. So discovering and thinking about predictable customer acquisition, so that you can get to the next phase.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
That's a good one. It's not a business book, but I'm going to give a great marketing book. It's called Breakthrough Advertising. And that is like the holy grail of direct response marketing books. If you want to know how to sell products quick, if you want to tap into human psychology, how to understand the flow of products and their life cycle, and how you are supposed to market products relative to when I say life cycle, I mean like how sophisticated is the marketplace for that product. So for example, the way you sell a brand new product in the marketplace that nobody has ever heard of is a lot different than you would sell a bottle of water, right? And the book literally teaches you, based on where the market sophistication is, how do you market that product. So if you're selling bottled water, you're probably going more towards the audience. You're going with, like, it would be the equivalent of like identity politics, right? So if you look at politics, it's very similar. Most people have heard the same thing about policies. They've heard the same thing about what they're going to do for the country. So what do a lot of people do? They move into identity politics, because that's where people connect. So if you have a product that's very highly sophisticated, like water, razors, balloons, I'm just making, coffee, those brands, the most successful brands in that space, typically latch on to an identity. So with that being said, I would say Breakthrough Advertising is single-handedly the best marketing book I've ever read. And I'll give you a second one too, the 16-word sales letter. Those 2 books literally changed the way that I write copy. And I actually have quite a few 7-figure sales letters under my belt, and they came from the framework in those 2 books.
So Breakthrough Advertising, I'm just putting that up on my list right now. That's Eugene Schwartz, which is
Eugene Schwartz. And the crazy part about that book is it was written in 1964, and it's so good, it's even more relevant now. It's so good.
Have you read David Ogilvy's Advertising Man?
Yes, I have it here somewhere. It's back there.
Yeah, it's a great book. That was 60s as well, I think. Still obviously relevant to this day. Have you read either of Robert Cialdini's books, Influence or Persuasion?
Yep, I have Influence back there.
It's a great book, isn't it?
The law of reciprocity.
Yeah,
is the main nugget I got out of that. I've gotten a lot of business from that.
My favorite story in that book is when he's talking to his neighbor, who's the toy executive. Do you remember that?
No, refresh my memory.
Right.
It's been probably 4 years since I read it.
So he gets back from, it's January, and he gets back from the toy store, and he's talking to his neighbor. And he said, funny thing just happened. I ran into an old school friend the same day, same time last year. We bumped into each other in this toy store doing exactly the same thing. And the neighbor was the next toy executive and asked, yes, can I ask you a couple of questions? I said, yeah. Um, were you in there to buy a toy that was shown on television in December? He said, yeah. And he said, strike one. Did you go into the store in December? This new popular toy that all the big toy company was, promoting, was it short on stock and sold out in December? I said, yeah. And strike two. And then he said, and did your son ask you, but Dad, you promised that you were going to get me this toy for Christmas? And then you had to buy a different toy for Christmas and then go back when the ad started again in January. And your son started saying, well, Dad, you said you were going to get that for me for Christmas. Now it's back in stock. And he said, yes, that's exactly what happened. Strike three. And this is exactly what happened to his mate that he ran into as well. So, yeah, just unbelievable.
Yeah. And that book has a lot to do with just human psychology, which is like rooted in a lot of the things that I do, when it comes to just selling products, selling services, marketing. So yeah, that was a good one. Like I said, the rule of reciprocity has been, one of the things that I would do that was hugely successful for me was I would do like not free consultations as like a marketing thing. Like I would literally, if I would get on a call with somebody and they would say, oh yeah, I may have somebody, but they're too small for you. I'll be like, listen to me. I genuinely mean this. Set up a meeting with them and I'm going to give them a free consultation. I don't want any money from that. I don't want anything. I'm just going to do it because I know if I do that enough times, that person's going to know somebody, that person who might know somebody else. And I have gotten probably behind speaking engagements and attending conferences. My second, and obviously referrals from existing clients, I would say, I guess, top two, top three would be providing free value with the expectation of nothing in return and sincerely not expecting anything in return and just giving as much as possible. Hey, you know what? My friend, he owns this business and he would get so much out of this. You guys should talk. I've gotten a lot of business doing that. And I learned that from influence, like just the rule of reciprocity. People are more inclined to give you something and feel indebted to you, even if you don't want them to, like you just genuinely want to help. And I've gone into a lot of conversations with that spirit, and it's been very. If you hear my dog whining in the back, it's hilarious. He's pulling on his chew toy.
Any great podcasts, online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
I read a lot of books. I'm a book guy. I'm reading right now. This one right now. I'm reading this one, The Mom Test. It's basically teaches you how to like learn about your customers, how to talk to your customers, how to figure out if you have a good idea, how to present your product and your ideas to people so that you don't get a lot of yes feedback. So it's really cool. It's rooted in human psychology and learning how to communicate with people. I'm really like just fundamentally interested in how to communicate with people because in the nature of direct response, it always amazed me that you could essentially write to somebody in a certain way and present an offer to them in a certain way that took them from a state of not wanting to buy anything to literally making them want to buy it. That has just been like such a huge, like non-tangible driver of why I do what I do. And I don't know why it intrigues me so much. The human brain just fascinates me.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Definitely. I mean, a great CRM is always a great tool to have, understanding how to manage the flow of your customers and I would say a great CRM and probably a really solid piece of infrastructure for your business. So like, basically like a website that's properly set up to take the traffic, even if you don't have a lot of traffic, just, leveraging a software like Go High Level, just software wise, if we want to give a name drop, I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but I use their software like crazy. I'm sure a lot of people that use.
I've heard they're good, particularly for agencies. Yeah. Go High Level.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great CRM, and it's really great for nurturing. It's very integrated. So like something that makes your life easier, you can build landers on it. So it's not really that the website looks super beautiful. It's built so that if there is traffic that comes to your website, you can capture it and convert it. So I would say that that's a really important tool to have.
Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
be patient, and be resilient and be ready. Just be ready to be resilient. Be ready because it's going to be, even now when things are I would say good for us, there's still a lot. There's still a lot of internal stuff that we have to constantly keep up speed on. So yeah, just be resilient. Take it one day at a time. Don't let the losses really like bring you down too low. You're always going to go. I actually call it a mourning period. So like there's times where I just let myself, like if I've taken a big L, I'll just let myself be in it for a day or two, knowing that I'm getting out of it. Like if I know I'm getting out of it, but I'm going to take a day and I'm just going to be pissed or I'm just going to be down and I'm going to let myself be there. And but yeah, I would say that would probably be it. Be resilient and be patient and keep pushing. Keep pushing. It sounds corny. I hate saying it, but it's really the truth.
Thanks so much for your time today, Caulen. Really enjoyed our chat. Congratulations to you and your business partner and the wider team starting 5 years ago. One-stop marketing shop for those businesses, direct to consumer, around the seven or eight figure mark, going from 2 team members up to 27 full-time equivalents now, helping clients with doing over 100 million annual revenue is fantastic. And growing the team up to around 40 pretty soon, and that client revenue over 120 million. So congratulations to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the time, Troy.
And for our audience, we would greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcast help with their growth will find us.